live in interesting times. Today's stories. Crisis hit Argentina hosts the G20 world leaders. UN chief says he is ready to meet the Saudi prince to discuss Yemen. Pelosi is inspired by the nomination to reclaim the U.S. House Speaker role. As more migrants arrive to shelters, living conditions get worse. Plus, parents of INC oratorio conductor humbled by son's accomplishment. Hello everyone, I'm Anna Kui, bringing you stories from around the globe, and this is Eagle News, Washington, D.C. Appealing to adjustment programs to face an economic crisis that has affected the poorest layers of its population, Argentina is getting ready to host world leaders of the 20 most important economies in the world. Global leaders gather in the Argentine capital for a G20 summit beginning on Friday, likely to be dominated by simmering international tensions over trade. U.S. President Donald Trump, who has shown little interest in multilateral diplomacy, is coming to the Group of 20 summit for high-pressure talks with his counterparts in China and Russia. Chinese President Xi Jinping is expected to meet Trump, seeking to break an impasse in their trade war on the sidelines of the G20 summit. Xi has cast himself as a defender of globalization, an opponent of protectionism, but U.S. and European governments say foreign companies still face many hurdles to conduct business in the communist-ruled country, including the forced transfer of technology or outright theft of intellectual property. British Prime Minister Theresa May's appearance is overshadowed by Brexit, and in particular her attempt to convince lawmakers to ratify her agreement with the EU. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan will seek to use the summit to again project his image on the international stage as a champion of the poor and oppressed, as well as an ignorable figure in international diplomacy. Argentina's President Mauricio Macri welcomes world leaders while his country has been brought to its knees by an economic crisis that forced him to seek a massive international monetary fund bailout. Hit by recession and 45% inflation, the center-right leader's chances of building a strong challenge for a second term in next year's elections look slim. With lame duck President Michel Temer in the waning days of his presidency, all eyes are on his far-right successor Jair Bolsonaro, who takes office on January 1st. President Vladimir Putin arrives in Buenos Aires amid accusations from Ukraine that he's preparing for a full-scale war after Russia shot at and captured 3 of Kyiv's ships. Prince Mohammed is expected to represent Riyadh in the face of a global outcry over Khashoggi's murder. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa, who came to power this year, is a firm supporter of multilateralism and the WTO, often underlining his commitment to international cooperation when speaking at home and abroad.
Es una pérdida de plata porque pérdida de tiempo en el sentido para nosotros, porque vamos a estar aislados, no vamos a poder salir, no vamos a poder, dicen que no vamos a poder salir porque va a estar todo cortado. No vamos a poder hablar por teléfono porque no va a haber señal, no va a haber nada, dicen, no sé.
Sufrí porque vivo a 2 cuadras y bueno, tuve que caminar como 8 cuadras más para que me permitan pasar. Pero bueno, son los costos que uno tiene que pagar por abrirse al mundo también. Yo no quiero Venezuela, no quiero Cuba, quiero un país democrático.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said Wednesday he was ready to meet Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to advance diplomatic efforts to end the war in Yemen. The UN chief told reporters there is a chance that talks on ending the war in Yemen could begin in early December in Sweden, and that this was an extremely important objective. The UN chief's readiness to hold talks with the Saudi leader came amid speculation that the 33-year-old prince could be treated as a pariah at the G20 over the Khashoggi murder, which triggered a global outcry.
We are in a very crucial moment in relation to Yemen. I believe there is a chance to be able to start effective negotiations in Sweden early in December, but we are not yet there. I think we are close to create the conditions for the possibility for peace talks to start, and that would be an extremely important objective. And of course, Saudi Arabia is absolutely crucial for that purpose, and I'm ready to discuss it with the Crown Prince or with any other Saudi officials, because I believe it is a very important objective at the present moment. If we are able to stop the Yemeni war, we will be stopping the most tragic humanitarian disaster we are facing in today's world.
According to UN diplomats, Griffiths is hoping to bring the Saudi-backed government and the Houthi rebels to Sweden for negotiations that could begin as early as December 3rd. The war has left millions on the brink of starvation and unleashed what the United Nations has described as the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Saudi Arabia has faced fresh calls to end the war in Yemen following the murder of a Khashoggi in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. Guterres, who has called for a thorough and transparent investigation of Khashoggi's murder, said he would not shy away from reiterating his position in a private conversation with the prince. Coming up, Pelosi is inspired by the nomination to reclaim the U.S. House Speaker role. As more migrants arrive to shelters, living conditions get worse. Eagle News, Washington, D.C. will be right back. Welcome back. You are watching Eagle News, Washington, D.C. Nancy Pelosi, the highest-ranking woman in the history of U.S. politics, was easily re-elected Wednesday to lead congressional Democrats, a major step on her march toward once again becoming Speaker of the House of Representatives. The California lawmaker ran unopposed to lead the House Democratic Caucus, a show of strength and strategic skill by the 78-year-old Pelosi, as the party elected a slate of Democrats to fill leadership roles. But Pelosi, who in a historic turn first wielded the Speaker's gavel a decade ago, nonetheless faces resistance. 32 critics voted against her in the closed-door session with 235 Democratic lawmakers and members-elect, meaning she will have work to do to unify the party ahead of a House floor vote for Speaker on January 3rd, the opening day of the new Congress.
We had a most unifying session just now in the House Democratic Caucus, the new House Democratic Caucus, the most diverse caucus ever. And it was so inspiring to hear my colleagues place my name in nomination once again for Speaker of the House. Convinced that everything we said in the campaign about a Congress, a new Congress, that is open and transparent, that is accountable to the people,
who
that
in a
is
historic turn first wielded the Speaker's gavel a decade ago,
and therefore bipartisan to the
faces
extent
resistance.
possible,
32 critics voted against her in the closed-door session with 235 Democratic lawmakers and members-elect, meaning she will have work to do to unify the party ahead of a House floor vote for Speaker on January 3rd. A robust resistance movement has demanded a new generation of leadership following a strong showing in this month's midterm elections when Democrats snatched a House majority from President Donald Trump's Republicans. Pelosi needs a simple majority on the House floor, 218 votes in the 435-member chamber, to prevail in January. If Democrats win the handful of remaining undecided House races, they will control 235 seats, meaning Pelosi can afford just 17 defectors. No Republicans are expected to vote for Pelosi, who has been opposed for years by Trump and his party, in large part because she shepherded then-President Barack Obama's health law through the House to its contentious historic passage in 2010. 16 Democrats signed a letter this month vowing to oppose Pelosi as Speaker. Pelosi has negotiated with some of the rebels, placating them with plum committee assignments and pledging to address issues such as gun safety. But two of the critics who met with Pelosi Wednesday said they remained at odds and that her speakership quest was in peril. Pelosi, a master legislator and political strategist who served as House Speaker for 4 years from 2007, played a pivotal role in her party's winning performance in the midterms. She raised millions of dollars for candidates and kept Democrats focused on their main hot-button issue on the campaign trail, health care. Should she take the gavel from outgoing Speaker Paul Ryan, Pelosi would become second in line to the president after Vice President Mike Pence, and seal her reputation as one of the great survivors in American politics. She and the Democratic leadership would have the power to block Republican legislation, hamstringing large parts of Trump's agenda, ranging from opposed new tax cuts to construction of a wall on the border with Mexico. Democrats made history Wednesday in other leadership elections. Central American migrants stay in shelters in Tijuana, Mexico, facing difficult living conditions. Still stinging from the tear gas that beat back their attempt to breach the U.S.-Mexican border, members of the Central American migrant caravan are starting to lose hope and in some cases are turning back. The migrants have played all their cards in recent days after more than a month's trek across Central America and Mexico, but with little success. Their surprise bid to rush the border en masse on Sunday ended as abruptly as it began, when U.S. Border Patrol agents fired tear gas and rubber bullets to force them back. And attempts to sneak across the border alone or in small groups appear to be largely failing. That leaves the roughly 5,000 migrants in the caravan with a handful of options, equally unappealing to most. Wait the months or years it could take to request asylum in the United States, settle in Mexico, or give up and go home. Their desperation is palpable at the improvised shelter where they are staying in Tijuana, across the border from San Diego. Living in crowded conditions with limited toilets, disease outbreaks, and 2 rations of food a day, many are still shell-shocked from the failed attempt by about 500 migrants to get over the chain-link border fence topped with barbed wire on Sunday. When we come back, parents of INC oratorio conductor humbled by son's accomplishment. Eagle News Washington, D.C. will return shortly. This is Eagle News Washington, D.C. I'm Anna Clee. Eagle News catches up with the parents of composer and conductor Juan Ramos after the U.S. premiere of the Iglesia Ni Cristo Oratorio at the Lincoln Center. Take a look.
Truthfully, I didn't know the depth of all this whole thing, I know that Lincoln Center is where they usually hold big concerts, and I wasn't really expecting much, but when I saw the brethren, everyone was so excited. And of course, with the first prayer, you could feel already the Holy Spirit.
The good Lord had a way of allowing the members to witness, the triumphs and the victory of the church that is being bestowed by God, not only through His words, but also through music. And not only to witness, but also to feel, the triumphs and victories that God is bestowing the church in these last days. It's just humbling that He used our son as an instrument to be able to do this. And when he was performing, can't help but be emotional, especially the part where the history of the church starting from its humble beginnings, I can't help to be so emotional. So it would be a mistake to think that this is work of a mere human being. It's really God's work. Really, really God's work.
Very inspiring. That is today's Eagle News Washington, D.C. Join us tomorrow for the weekend edition. Visit our websites at Eaglenews.PH and EagleNewsLive.com. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Twitter.com/EagleNewsPH. Thank you for watching. I'm Anna Cui, and I am 1 with 25.